Joining us now via the phone from Phoenix is former presidential candidate Senator John McCain, Republican from Arizona. And Senator, we are so honored to have you here with us on Newsmax TV.
Thank you. It's my pleasure. I hope to be in studio with you soon.
Well, I look forward to it. Well, the new debt ceiling law slashes spending by about $1 trillion over 10 years, but most of the hard decisions are left to the Congressional Joint Select Committee. How much faith do you have in an election year that the committee will be any more successful than Congress has been in finding agreement on spending cuts versus tax hikes?
Well, first of all, there's no doubt about the partisanship that exists, and that is bred by a difference in philosophy between ourselves and the Democrats and President Obama. Fundamentally, we believe in shrinking the role of government and cutting spending, and obviously they have the opposite view. I believe that these 12 individuals will very likely come to some agreement, although going in, I believe our Republican representatives on this committee will state at the onset that we will not support tax increases. We've just had a huge fight over that. We're not going to. We just think that that would harm an economic recovery. But I think that they will be talented enough and dedicated enough, and frankly, a bit of ego that they don't want to end up in failure.
Well, military budget analysts are saying that the Pentagon could be cut or could be forced to cut as much as $550 billion over 10 years from defense. You're the ranking member of the Armed Services Committee. Do you support cuts this deep, and how do you see cuts like this impacting the military?
If there were those kind of cuts, which would result, as you mentioned, if the committee failed, and I'm optimistic about the committee not failing, but I would be on the floor that day fighting to preserve our nation's security. The problem what's going on now from the administration is they are mandating cuts in defense without it being justified by policy, by national security. Simply, the president is tossing out numbers when we have to find out what our strategy and policy is and then shape the budget around that, not vice versa.
Senator, it's expected that Democrats on this Joint Select Committee will push for fresh revenues by attempting to close tax loopholes for the oil and gas industry and corporate jet owners. And in the Rose Garden yesterday, President Obama once again took aim at the rich. Are you tired of class warfare by President Obama?
I think most Americans are sick and tired of this class warfare, and I'd like to give you short answers, but let me just give you a small example. In the 90s, we were the same kind of class warfare against luxury yachts. So guess what? We jacked up the taxes on luxury yachts, and guess what happened? The luxury yacht business went to Europe, and a couple of years later, in the middle of the night, the Democrats repealed it. They were in the majority at that time. They're getting sick and tired of the class warfare, and it would take about 200 years to get the budget in balance if we did away with corporate jets. I want to encourage the oil companies. I want us out there in offshore drilling. You might recall drill, baby, drill. And frankly, the president has fired all his bullets with this $800 billion stimulus, the Dodd-Frank, the Obamacare. And so now he's saying that we need to have the patent law passed, and that would be restore our economy. So, no, I'm tired of it. The American people are tired of it, and class warfare doesn't work. One reason why it doesn't work is because we all want to be rich.
Well, Democrats are also threatening a hard line on resisting cuts to Medicare and Social Security benefits. How should Republicans proceed on this one?
I think we should have certain reforms that are absolutely necessary. We all know that Medicare and Social Security have to be reformed. I remember when Ronald Reagan and Tip O'Neill reformed Social Security and made tough decisions. But let me also get back a second to this whole issue of loopholes. Look, if you call ethanol subsidies and wind subsidies and solar subsidies, if you call that loopholes, count me in. I've been against ethanol subsidies for the last 15 years. So if you're talking about that kind of loophole, special interest, special deals in the tax code, of course, my view is, of course I'm against those. I think we ought to take the corporate tax and cut it from 35 to 25, and at the same time do away with these special tax breaks that special interests have gotten just because of the lobbying power in Washington. And ethanol subsidies, sugar subsidies, all of those things. I'd want to get rid of all agricultural subsidies. And if you call that a tax increase, fine. I call it doing away with special interest influence.
Well, a Newsmax Insider Advantage poll finds that 73% of Americans are disgusted by the overall job performance of the House, the Senate, and the President in efforts to reach this debt deal. Senator McCain, you are one of the most experienced statesmen in Congress. Can you explain to the American public why there seems to be this disconnect between politicians and the public?
By the way, I saw another poll that said that 70-some% thought we were behaving like spoiled children, and I think 14% said we weren't. I haven't met anybody in the 14% category since I've been home. Americans expect us to reach agreements. Ronald Reagan is our hero. He was able to reach across the aisle and get things done. Sometimes he regretted it, by the way, when he agreed to a tax increase back in the 80s, but 86, I believe it was. But so they don't like to be frightened that they're not going to get their Social Security check or that their access to their benefits that they've earned would be cut off. We saw that back in 1995. So in a way, I don't blame them. But I would like to point out again, last November, the message to Congress from the American people was cut the spending, stop mortgaging our children's futures. So for us to betray what was a clear message of last November, then we are ignoring the will of the voters.
Country singer Willie Nelson, not necessarily a favorite among Republicans, told CNN this week that Americans are more concerned about having a roof over their head than they are about this debt deal. How do politicians convince Americans that this debt deal is the most important thing?
Well, first of all, I'm a great admirer and advocate of Willie Nelson. A lot of people don't know he once served as an enlisted man in the United States Air Force during the Korean War. But I think he's right. I think Americans are most interested in jobs, and jobs. But see, our view is that unless we get the spending under control, we are going to use so much of America's precious treasure on paying off the debt and the interest on the debt that we will not be able to create jobs. And we will, by the way, two quick recommendations for the President and for all of us. One, a hiring freeze on federal employees. Overall, just stop hiring. That's what Ronald Reagan did when he came to office in 1981. And the other is a moratorium on all regulations. Ask any business person, small or large, they will tell you that they are being choked by regulations. And most importantly, they have no confidence that how long in the future they will be spared from these regulations. That number and amount and cost of regulations that have been enacted in this administration is unbelievable.
Well, as we move toward 2012, which party do you think has been helped most by the debt debate and its outcome?
Well, I think because, as you mentioned earlier, because of the what went on and the really causing great concern amongst the American people, neither came out looking very good. But it is a fact that the president was basically a bystander. The deal was really orchestrated by Mitch McConnell, as you know, and it was his last option, and he knew we were going to get to the last option, and so and the president, presidents are supposed to lead. The president, last time we heard from him before the agreement was on Monday night when he said he was still in favor of raising taxes when that was already off the table. So I think the American people are fully aware that he didn't lead.
What do you think 4 more years of his policies would do to America?
I'd be obviously very concerned about it, and I'm confident. By the way, I hear all this criticism of Republican candidates. I want to assure you we will come up with a candidate that will be viable, that will be competitive, and I really believe will win. Look, I'm so upset by this latest economic news, and I know all of us are. But we just can't keep going down this path that we're on without. We have a greater obligation to our kids and our grandkids.
Who do you like amongst the GOP candidates?
I like them all. I've stayed out of it, and I think it's incumbent upon me to stay out of it. I encourage all of them, and I appreciate their willingness to run. I know how tough it is, but I think it would be inappropriate for me to endorse any candidate.
Do you think that your former vice presidential candidate, Sarah Palin, will ultimately enter the race?
I don't know. I know that she's going through a decision-making process. I know that if she did run, she'd be a very viable candidate in spite of the merciless attacks that the liberal media continues to mount on her.
Now, you recently stated that without the Tea Party steering the debt conversation, that there wouldn't have been a debt ceiling agreement, and that the Tea Party deserves a lot of credit for the outcome. Have the events of the past few weeks strengthened the Tea Party for the 2012 election?
I think it depends on what the Tea Party does and how well organized they are. They were more of a movement than an organization. But there's no doubt that what I meant was that even though some of their candidates for the Senate, the three of them, I think we would have won with other candidates, but the fact is that we regained control of the House of Representatives. I think the Tea Party deserves significant credit for that and their passion and their getting out to vote. On the floor of the Senate, I quoted from Wall Street Journal about hobbits, and I was talking about people who said that we could not raise the debt limit unless and until we passed a balanced budget amendment to the Constitution. We are not immediately, with the makeup of the Senate, going to have enough votes that would require 20 Democrat votes and every Republican vote, 67 votes, passing the balanced budget amendment to the Constitution. The hobbits are not real people. It is not real to expect the passage of a balanced budget amendment to the Constitution through the Senate, but I believe the ultimate answer has got to be the passage of a balanced budget amendment to the Constitution, because we've proven time after time that we haven't kept our promise to the American people, especially where cutting spending is concerned.
Senator McCain, last question real quickly on a separate but related issue. President Obama today told Congress to end recess and fund the FAA. He says the FAA shutdown is a lose-lose-lose situation. What is your reaction to that?
My reaction is that they were trying to, the Democrats were trying to use the reauthorization of the FAA to make it easier to unionize the airlines. It was that simple. And they wanted to continue funding these airports that are small, that are unnecessary, and many of them short rides to a major airport, subsidizing them to as much as $3,000 taxpayer dollars per ticket. And the Republicans, we want to do away with that kind of obscene subsidies, which we simply can't afford. So, but the underlying issue is are the Democrats in the Senate, who are the ones that shape this, going to be able to force a situation where the labor unions, another payoff to the labor unions, to make it easier for them to organize. So I'm very sorry if there is this holdup. I'm very sorry if some of the construction is being held up. I'm very sorry about it. But we're not going to stand by and let them, on simply a reauthorization of the Federal Aviation Administration, do favors and payoffs for the labor unions.
All right, Senator John McCain, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you.
It's such an honor to have you on, and we look forward to having you on again sometime soon.
Anytime. Thanks. Bye.